Right, guys, so how did NOTA get... Well, firstly, what does NOTA stand for, I guess, and how did you start? What inspired you to start the channel?
Well, NOTA stands for none of the above, for obvious reasons. I think we sort of felt that students were being really underrepresented, like at a political level. So, and we thought, there's not, like, we were looking at YouTube, like looking for like sort of political commentaries, thinking like, you know, like how can we learn more about politics? How can we educate ourselves more? And there was just nothing really there. So we thought like, well, we were always like talk about politics, and you know, we really interested in politics, and we thought like there's definitely a gap in the market there. So we thought definitely we'll like try and start up some sort of YouTube channel, try and educate students like ourselves, but not only students, like all sorts of people as well. And we started that off with the Twitter, didn't we?
Yeah.
Twitter account, trying to like build a base from the start.
So how long has the Twitter been going for?
It's been going for about half a year now.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
quite successful. Like, we have quite reputable people following us. Like the leader of the Greens followed us the other day.
Yeah, a few
And we've
MPs.
got a few
So
MPs
gathering a
and
bit of
stuff.
steam.
Yeah, gathering a bit of steam. But just to echo what Ollie said, it's more of a response to I wouldn't say people are apathetic to politics. If you go to the school, to universities, Amnesty International Society, you go to the Feminist Society, people are passionate about these issues. It's apathy towards political parties, and I think none of the above...
And the political system in general.
Exactly, and I think none of the above is a response to that, and also the mainstream media's lackluster approach to exposing that system.
Sure, okay, so it's about a sense of accessibility for students.
Right.
And also sort of challenging the status quo about how these issues are normally discussed. Do you think there's a certain absence in the wider media about anything in particular? Like, what is it that you're already getting at?
Like the other day, for instance, we reported on the Central African Republic. This has attracted no media attention, and I think it's sort of... The media does two things. This is my perspective now. The media does two things to me which I really disagree with. One, it neglects to... It kind of focuses on politics in the prism of the system we're given. It neglects to sort of challenge the status quo of the system itself. Issues such as party funding, lobbying, are seen as commonplace in politics. They're not things that the media sees as sort of an endemic corruption in politics. It has to be seen like that. If your responsibility is to do a job for Ollie, and I'm paying you as a special interest so that you don't do that job for Ollie, that is a conflict of interest. And politics is working like that, but the media just sees this as sort of a normal occurrence in the political system, rather than calling it for what it is, corruption. And
Fair
I think the media is largely responsible for that. And to add to that, there's a sort of... What I didn't like about what all media does is it sort of elevates some human suffering as more important than other human suffering.
Okay.
And if you look at the linguistic terms of the media, words such as collateral damage are used to describe people who've been blown to bits in Iraq or Afghanistan or the Central African Republic. But if that happened here in the form of a September 11th or a 7/7, this type of language would not be used. And I think even though there's subtle differences in terms or phrases, they help to shape the mentality of the way we approach politics.
So it's about coming at things from a different angle, from a fresh perspective that isn't hampered by a media sort of framework that exists at the moment. Okay, so you don't think there's a sense of apathy among students towards politics? You think it's more a general sense of apathy towards political parties?
I'd say that, yeah.
I'd agree. I think towards politics in general, no. Because I think when the government tripled tuition fees, for example, the protests, I went to the protests in London, they were like one of the biggest things I've ever seen. And like that's how passionately students like get involved.
Do you not think though there's a sense of self-interest there, like when it affects students directly? Like student protests, students have been known to be some of the most politically active groups in the 20th century. Do you think that's something that's missing now?
No, because I think in wider society in the whole, I think people get in politics, people join like certain causes, particularly if they've had it interests them in some sort of selfish way, not selfish way, but I'm trying to say, and I think it's really important that students don't become apathetic towards politics.
Sure.
Because, as I say, we really are underrepresented in politics. But I think in society in the whole, I think they get involved in causes because they're self-interested by them, just like students would.
Anyone does that, to be honest.
I think you can't say that students in specific terms do that.
No, fair enough. So what do you think are the big political issues facing students at the moment? What's most relevant that people really need to know about on a bigger level than just maybe weekly specifics, if you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, we just did the budget. Sorry, that is a weekly specific for this week, but it is
it's a wider implication.
And that didn't have anything for young people, did it?
No, we were saying in the video it really focused on the grey vote, pensions, things like that, and we made the point it had absolutely nothing to help students or younger people in any way.
Mm-hmm. And obviously we have the rise in tuition fees. I think most students know about that. That is going to sort of change the demographic of the type of people that can go to university. Going to mean university perhaps isn't accessible for many people, and that is a great shame because education needs to be as accessible as possible, in my view. And just for young people in general, we have closures of youth clubs, things like that, going on in society.
So you think basically that students, or young people in the whole, have a bit of a responsibility to engage more with the political system to sort of justify policy going towards that vote, as it were?
I think 100%, yeah.
Everyone does. Every group does. Although, when you say that, but some groups have way more sway than others, and that is because of the way politics is structurally designed in this country. If you look at the funding for parties, the Conservative Party, for instance, receives 50% of funding from the City of London. How is a student voice meant to compete against that type of financial and political sway? It's near enough impossible. And the Labour Party is the exact same when it comes to the trade unions.
Sure. A lot of it's got to have to do with where the politics of voting, doesn't it? Your electoral sort of leverage. If you know what I mean.
I think to add to that, I think I mean, the way you're talking about students perhaps being apathetic towards politics, I think people like Russell Brand coming out and saying don't vote because it's not going to change anything is influencing young people at the moment, and older generations perhaps do have more of a sway just because they vote. They vote, that like more of them turn out to vote than younger people. So I think the government, in order to stay in government past 2015, are now beginning to, and I think has been the case for quite a few years now, are focusing on them much more than students, because I think they don't see that as a potential election winning vote.
I agree.
So it's a self-perpetuating problem.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree with that, but I'd say a lot of these gestures towards the elderly in the recent budget are kind of token gestures. We were just saying they've reduced bingo duty.
I know.
I mean, these are not really issues that are going to sort of
influence the election.
They're not issues that will sort of, what I'm trying to say is they're not issues.
Then what are the issues that students should really be bothered about at the moment?
Structural economic issues such as youth unemployment, things like that, and that will definitely affect them in the long run. And no party, in my view, has an answer to these issues. And students, I mean, we could say they could turn out more, but they turned out in massive numbers to vote for the Liberal Democrats in the last election, and look what happened. So it's no guarantee that if you vote, then your voice will be heard. You have to. That's just my opinion, anyway. You have to really look at behind the way parties are funded, who's backing them, their policies in the past, the history of the personnel within the party, to really make an informed decision. It's not a case of if you just turn up and tick a name at the ballot box, something will happen for you. It won't. You have to think beyond that and think, are the people who are on this ballot box really worth my time, worth my vote?
Sure. Okay, well, we're talking about representation of student bodies and this kind of demographic. What's your perception? There's been a lot of stuff in the student media recently about how our union at Bristol is perhaps misrepresenting people. Do you see there as being an important role in union politics about elected officials within a student democracy?
I think I've got to be honest, I don't really know much about the union politics, and I think that's true of most people.
Yeah.
You go to the everyday student and say, what's happened, what are the most contentious issues in Bristol's sort of student union representatives, what are the issues they're taking on? People don't know, and there's a real sense of distance between that conversation and what ordinary students are sort of going through, and that, I think that reverberates right throughout the whole university, in the sense that even the students' union is far away from, very isolated from anything else, and I think that's kind of is echoed in the political. A sense
of alienation from the union on the whole.
Definitely. Yeah.
Fair enough. Now, I've seen a bit of it, but do you guys often disagree on issues? How fractious can it get, not just on video, but in day-to-day conversations? And why might it be?
No, it's. I think, I don't know. You might have a different answer to this. We might be disagreeing on this answer, but on the whole, I think we hold generally similar political views. But we certainly, that's not to say we certainly don't disagree. I mean, we disagree on specifics on things, but on the whole, I'd say pretty similar. But there'll be videos and there'll be conversations where we do quite obviously disagree with each other. So.
Yeah. Obviously, a lot of the issues we highlight are around sort of corruption, and as we don't really, a lot of the videos we've done so far haven't really been a sort of left-right issue where me and him might have room to disagree. They've sort of been a right-wrong sort of, this is outrageous, look how bad this is, kind of thing.
Okay.
So, but no, we've disagreed quite a bit. I've taken you to school a few times.
We won't get into that. Right, we better wrap up. But I want you both to tell me who your political hero is and why.
That's tricky. The problem is with politicians. Yeah, you'll struggle to find someone who's absolutely, he'll absolutely agree with. I mean, I was telling Sam earlier, he's not a politician or journalist, but John Stuart Mill, I don't know if you've heard of him, he's quite a famous philosopher, quite an outspoken libertarian. He's written a lot of books about it, and I really think I agree a lot with what he says, and I think I base quite a lot of my principles.
Give viewers a little rundown, quick synopsis of what he's about?
Yeah, he sort of advocates minimal state intervention. So things like a welfare state and things like that, he'd completely disagree with. Now, that's not to say I completely agree with everything he says. Like, in its purest form, that's what he's saying. He's saying the only time the state should really directly intervene is when somebody is at risk. Health-wise, if someone gets injured, that's the only time they should be intervening to protect their citizens. Otherwise, just completely stay out of it. And yeah, on the whole, I think that's quite a good philosophy to have. It gives us maximum, as much freedom as possible. I think that's the kindest thing that a government could do for its people, is to give them as much freedom as possible.
Sure. Okay, so you're a bit of a free marketer. So what about you, Sam?
Probably advocate a bit more state intervention than you.
Yeah.
But I like George Orwell. Well, that goes directly against state intervention, 1984 and things like that. But George Orwell's a massive. I love his novels and things like that. Some of the greatest things I've read, and the civil rights movement in America of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. These are really people that I think not only change the political conversation, but change the consciousness of people. That's the real difficult battle, I think, in politics. Is not just to win on the ballot box, but to win people up here and change the way people perceive
Perhaps what
things.
Russell Brand is doing a bit dangerously.
Perhaps. I don't think, but the thing about what I'd say is different between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and someone like Russell Brand. Russell Brand talks about a revolution of consciousness, but he doesn't really have an idea of what that might mean, what that might entail. Whereas Malcolm X, if you asked him, in what way does the mentality of the African American population have to change, he'd give you this.
So for you, it's all about substance over style, basically.
Of course.
Okay. Well, thanks guys for talking. We love what you do from UBTV. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.